A wealthy woman publicly humiliated a poor mother at their children's school meeting for not being able to afford a field trip. 10 years later, when she desperately needs a job, she discovers her new boss is the same woman she destroyed. But what the former victim does next will leave you speechless. Before we start, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Let's dive into this incredible story. Victoria Sterling adjusted her designer handbag and checked her Cartier watch as she strode through the marble hallways of prestigious academy, Chicago's most exclusive private school. At 42, she owned Sterling Media Group, a multi-million-dollar marketing empire, and her presence commanded attention wherever she went. Tonight was the monthly Parent-Teacher Association meeting, and Victoria had one goal: to ensure that every school decision aligned with what she considered appropriate standards. As the school's largest donor, she wielded considerable influence, and she wasn't shy about using it. Mrs. Sterling, Principal Matthews, greeted her with the careful deference reserved for major benefactors. "Thank you for coming. We have some exciting proposals to discuss tonight." Victoria nodded curtly, her cold blue eyes scanning the assembled parents in the conference room. Most were from Chicago's elite families, CEOs, surgeons, attorneys, people who belonged in her world. But her gaze stopped abruptly when she noticed someone who clearly didn't fit. In the back corner sat a Latina woman in her early 30s, wearing a simple blouse and cardigan that had clearly seen better days. Her name tag read Maria Gonzalez, and she sat with the uncomfortable posture of someone who knew she didn't belong but was trying desperately to blend in. Victoria's lip curled slightly in distaste. She knew exactly why Maria was here. Her daughter Sophia was one of 3 scholarship students at prestigious academy, Charity Cases, as Victoria privately thought of them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Principal Matthews began, "tonight we're discussing the annual 8th grade educational trip to Washington, D.C. The cost per student is $3,500, covering flights, hotels, meals, and educational activities." Victoria smiled with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of thing that separated the wheat from the chaff. Real prestigious academy families would see $3,500 as pocket change. The scholarship families would reveal themselves for what they truly were: poor people pretending to belong. She watched Maria's face carefully as the principal continued explaining the trip details. The woman's expression shifted from interest to concern to barely concealed panic as the full scope of the expense became clear. "Are there any questions?" Principal Matthews asked. Victoria's hand shot up immediately. "I think this trip sounds wonderful. Finally, an opportunity for our children to have the kind of educational experience they deserve. When will we need to submit payment?" "The deadline is in 2 weeks," the principal replied. "We understand it's a significant expense, but we believe the educational value is immeasurable." Victoria's eyes glittered with malicious intent as she glanced back at Maria. "And what happens if some families can't afford to participate? I assume there are provisions for different economic circumstances?" The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Several parents shifted in their seats, recognizing the loaded nature of Victoria's question. "Well," Principal Matthews said carefully, "we do have a limited fund for financial assistance, but—" "Financial assistance?" Victoria interrupted, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "You mean welfare for the field trip?" Maria felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. Every eye in the room was now looking in her direction, and she knew exactly what they were seeing: the poor mother who couldn't afford what everyone else could manage easily. "Mrs. Sterling," the principal said diplomatically, "we prefer to call it need-based support." "Call it what you want," Victoria said dismissively, "but let's be honest about what we're discussing here. Some families earned their place at this school through hard work and success. Others are here on charity. I think it's only fair that the educational opportunities should reflect that distinction." The cruelty of Victoria's words hung in the air like poison. Maria felt her throat tighten with unshed tears, but she forced herself to remain silent. Sophia had worked so hard to earn her scholarship, maintaining straight A's while helping Maria with her night cleaning jobs. This school was her daughter's chance at a future Maria had never been able to imagine for herself. Perhaps, Victoria continued, warming to her topic, the school could arrange a separate, more budget-friendly activity for the scholarship students, something more appropriate to their circumstances. The suggestion landed like a slap across Maria's face. Victoria wasn't just excluding Sophia from the trip. She was suggesting that scholarship students deserved less, that their poverty made them unworthy of the same opportunities as their wealthy classmates. Maria stood up slowly, her hands trembling. Every instinct told her to flee, to escape this room full of people who saw her as nothing more than an embarrassment. But then she thought of Sophia, waiting at home, dreaming of all the possibilities this school represented. "Excuse me," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying clearly in the silent room. Victoria turned toward her with an expression of barely contained disdain. "Yes?" "My daughter Sophia earned her place here," Maria said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "She has a 4.0 GPA. She volunteers at the community center every weekend. She's in the debate club, the science olympiad, and the student government. She didn't get here on charity. She got here on merit." Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. "Merit is admirable, but it doesn't pay for $3,500 field trips, does it?" The cruelty in her tone made several parents look away in discomfort, but Victoria was just getting started. "You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about," Victoria continued, addressing the room as if Maria weren't even there. "When we lower our standards to accommodate people who can't afford to be here, we create exactly these kinds of uncomfortable situations. Your daughter may be very bright, but if you can't afford the full prestigious academy experience, perhaps you should consider whether this is really the right fit." Maria felt the words hit her like physical blows. Around the room, some parents nodded in agreement while others studied their hands in embarrassment. But no one spoke up for her. No one challenged Victoria's casual cruelty. "I work 3 jobs to support my family," Maria said, her voice growing stronger despite the tears threatening to fall. "I clean offices at night. I work at a grocery store on weekends, and I take care of elderly patients during the day. I may not have millions of dollars, but I work harder than anyone in this room." Victoria let out a soft, mocking laugh. "Oh, I'm sure you work very hard, but hard work without results is just sad. The reality is that some people are meant to clean the offices, and others are meant to own them. Your daughter is getting an excellent education here for free. Maybe that should be enough." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria looked around the room, searching for even one face that showed sympathy or support. Instead, she saw embarrassment, discomfort, and in some cases, agreement with Victoria's assessment. Principal Matthews cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we could discuss the financial assistance programs privately." "There's nothing private about poverty," Victoria said coldly, "and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that some families simply don't belong at this level. I'm sure there are perfectly adequate public schools that would be much more suitable." Maria gathered her purse with as much dignity as she could muster. "Thank you for making your position clear, Mrs. Sterling. I understand exactly what you think of people like me." As Maria walked toward the door, Victoria delivered her final devastating blow. "Mrs. Gonzalez," she called out sweetly, "I do hope you'll consider what's best for Sophia. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is help them understand their limitations. Dreams are lovely, but reality is what puts food on the table." Maria paused at the doorway, her hand on the handle. For a moment she considered turning around and saying something, anything, that might wipe the smug expression off Victoria Sterling's face. Instead, she walked out into the hallway, closing the door quietly behind her. She made it all the way to her 15-year-old Honda Civic before she broke down crying. That night, Maria sat at her kitchen table in their small apartment, staring at the field trip permission slip that Sophia had brought home earlier that week. The paper might as well have been written in a foreign language for all the good it did them. $3,500 might as well have been $35,000. Sophia emerged from her bedroom, textbooks in hand, ready for another late-night study session. At 13, she was already more focused and driven than most adults Maria knew. "Mom, how did the meeting go?" Sophia asked, settling down at the table with her homework. Maria forced a smile. "It was fine, mija. Just the usual parent stuff." Sophia studied her mother's face with the perceptiveness that had made her such an excellent student. "What about the Washington trip? Did they say anything about financial aid?" Maria's heart broke a little more. Sophia had been talking about the Washington trip for weeks, researching all the monuments and museums they would visit, planning out which historical sites she was most excited to see. She had no idea that her mother had just been systematically humiliated in front of a room full of parents who saw them as charity cases. "The school is looking into options," Maria said carefully. "But Sophia, I need you to understand that we might not be able to make it work. The trip is very expensive and—" "I know, Mom," Sophia interrupted gently. "I've been saving my babysitting money. I have almost $200. The innocence of her daughter's offer nearly shattered Maria's composure completely. $200 saved from babysitting neighborhood children, offered up as if it could somehow bridge the gap between their reality and the world Sophia was trying so hard to join. "That's very thoughtful, sweetheart, but I could get a job," Sophia said eagerly. "I know I'm only 13, but Mrs. Patterson next door said she might need help with her garden this spring, and maybe I could tutor some of the younger kids. I'm really good at math." Maria reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "Sophia, listen to me. You are the smartest, most hard-working person I know, but some things in life aren't about being smart or working hard. Some things are about having money, and right now we don't have enough." Sophia's face fell, but she nodded with the mature acceptance of a child who had grown up understanding the weight of financial limitations. "It's okay, Mom," she said quietly. "The trip isn't everything. I can learn about Washington from books and documentaries." But it wasn't okay, and Maria knew it. This wasn't just about a field trip. It was about belonging, about opportunities, about the message that her brilliant daughter was somehow worth less than the children whose parents could write a check without thinking twice. That night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Maria sat in her living room and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She pulled out the application she had been working on for months, an application for a business degree at Chicago Community College. For 3 years, Maria had been taking night classes whenever she could afford them, slowly working toward a degree in business administration. It was a dream that seemed almost impossibly distant, especially on nights like this when the gulf between her current reality and her aspirations felt insurmountable. But Victoria Sterling had done something unforgivable tonight. She had looked at Sophia, brilliant, hard-working, dreams-full Sophia, and declared her unworthy. She had reduced Maria's sacrifices, her 3 jobs, her determination to give her daughter a better life, to nothing more than an embarrassing inconvenience. Maria picked up a pen and began filling out the application for the accelerated program. It would mean 4 years of 16-hour days, juggling work and school and motherhood. It would mean sacrifices she couldn't even imagine yet. But it also meant that someday, she would be in a position where no one could ever humiliate her daughter the way Victoria Sterling had humiliated them tonight. "Someday," Maria whispered to herself, sealing the envelope that contained her application and her dreams. "Someday I'm going to make sure that woman understands exactly what she did to us." She had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. The next 10 years of Maria Gonzalez's life were a master class in determination and sacrifice. While Victoria Sterling continued to glide through Chicago's social and business circles, Maria built her life from the ground up, one night class and one small victory at a time. Sophia never went on the Washington, D.C. trip. Instead, she threw herself into her studies with even more intensity, as if academic excellence could somehow bridge the gap that money had created. She graduated as valedictorian of her class at prestigious academy, earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, and was now completing her MBA at Harvard Business School. Maria had kept every report card, every honor roll certificate, every academic award Sophia had earned. They were tacked to a bulletin board in her small apartment, like a shrine to the dreams that Victoria Sterling had tried to crush. But Maria's own transformation had been even more dramatic. After graduating with her business degree, she had started small, very small. A freelance marketing consultation business run from her kitchen table, helping local small businesses with their advertising and social media. She worked 18-hour days, taking any client who would pay her, learning through trial and error and sheer determination. Her breakthrough came when she helped a struggling family restaurant increase their revenue by 400% through a targeted social media campaign. Word spread through Chicago's Latino business community, and soon Maria found herself with more clients than she could handle. That's when she made her second life-changing decision. She took out every loan she could qualify for, maxed out her credit cards, and rented a small office space. Gonzalez Marketing Solutions was born. The first year nearly broke her. She slept on the office couch most nights, survived on vending machine sandwiches, and came dangerously close to bankruptcy 3 times. But Maria had something that money couldn't buy. She had a point to prove and a daughter to make proud. Her specialty became working with businesses that larger marketing firms ignored: immigrant-owned shops, family restaurants, small service companies. She understood their struggles because she had lived them. She knew how to stretch a marketing dollar because she had never had enough marketing dollars to waste. More importantly, she was hungry in a way that Victoria Sterling and her peers had never been. Every client was personal. Every success was a step further away from that humiliating night at prestigious academy. By year 5, Gonzalez Marketing Solutions had 15 employees and a client list that included some of Chicago's fastest-growing small businesses. Maria had moved from the small office to a proper suite, and from the Honda Civic to a reliable Toyota Camry. By year 8, she was competing for contracts with medium-sized corporations. Her company's reputation for delivering results on tight budgets had spread beyond the Latino business community. She was being invited to industry conferences, quoted in marketing journals, and recognized as one of Chicago's rising business leaders. But it was in year 9 that Maria received the opportunity that would change everything. Meridian Industries, a major food and beverage distributor, was looking for a new marketing firm. Their previous agency, a large established company that charged premium prices for mediocre results, had been dropped after a campaign failure that cost them millions in lost revenue. Maria's company was invited to pitch alongside 3 other firms, all of them significantly larger and more established than Gonzalez Marketing Solutions. The contract was worth $2.3 million annually, more than Maria's entire company had earned in its first 3 years combined. She spent weeks preparing for the presentation, crafting a campaign that would showcase everything she had learned about connecting with customers, about authentic storytelling, about making every dollar count. This was her chance to prove that the small company built by the woman Victoria Sterling had dismissed as cleaning lady material could outperform the biggest players in Chicago. The presentation went flawlessly. Maria's team delivered a marketing strategy that was innovative, cost-effective, and perfectly targeted to Meridian's customer base. The executives were impressed, asking detailed questions and nodding appreciatively at her responses. But 3 days later, Maria received a call that felt like an echo of that night at prestigious academy 10 years earlier. "Ms. Gonzalez, the Meridian executive said carefully, we were very impressed with your presentation. Your strategy is creative and well-researched. Maria felt the but coming before he said it. But we've decided to go with Sterling Media Group. They have more experience with accounts of this magnitude, and frankly, our board felt more comfortable with their established reputation, Sterling Media Group, Victoria Sterling's company. Maria hung up the phone and sat in her office, staring out at the Chicago skyline. 10 years of work, of sacrifice, of proving herself over and over again, and she was still being dismissed in favor of someone who had been born into privilege. That afternoon she did something she hadn't done since the night of the PTA meeting. She went home early, closed the door to her bedroom, and cried tears of frustration and anger. But by morning, Maria's tears had crystallized into something harder and more focused than mere determination. They had become strategy. She began researching Sterling Media Group with the thoroughness of a detective. She analyzed their client list, their campaign results, their financial reports. What she discovered both enraged and encouraged her. Victoria Sterling's company was successful, but it was lazy. They coasted on their reputation and their connections, charging premium prices for work that was often mediocre. They had lost 3 major accounts in the past year due to underperformance, but their established network of wealthy clients kept them profitable. More importantly, Maria discovered that Sterling Media Group was vulnerable. They were heavily dependent on a few large clients. Their overhead was enormous, and their profit margins were actually lower than Maria's leaner operation. Victoria Sterling had built her success on the assumption that connections and reputation mattered more than results. Maria was about to teach her how wrong that assumption could be. Over the next year, Maria began targeting Sterling Media Group's clients directly, not through underhanded tactics or corporate sabotage, but through superior service and better results. Every time a Sterling Media contract came up for renewal, Gonzalez Marketing Solutions was there with a better proposal, better prices, and a track record of delivering exactly what they promised. One by one, Victoria's clients began to defect. First, a restaurant chain that had grown frustrated with Sterling's generic campaigns. Then a tech startup that needed more personalized attention than Victoria's large firm could provide. Then a retail company that wanted better results for their budget. Each victory felt like a small piece of justice. But Maria wasn't satisfied with small victories anymore. She wanted something bigger. She wanted the kind of vindication that would make Victoria Sterling understand exactly what it felt like to be dismissed, humiliated, and underestimated. That opportunity came in the form of a phone call on a Tuesday morning in October. Ms. Gonzalez? The voice was professional but carried a note of desperation that Maria recognized immediately. This is James Morrison from Sterling Media Group. I was wondering if we might be able to schedule a meeting with you. Maria almost laughed out loud. What can I do for you, Mr. Morrison? Well, we're exploring some strategic partnerships in the Chicago market. Your company has been getting quite a bit of attention lately, and we thought there might be opportunities for collaboration. Translation: Sterling Media Group was hemorrhaging clients, and they wanted to discuss either acquiring Maria's company or forming some kind of alliance that would stop the bleeding. I'd be happy to meet, Maria said calmly. How does Thursday at 2 p.m. sound? You can come to my office. Actually, Morrison said carefully, Ms. Sterling was hoping you might come to our office. She's very interested in meeting you personally. Maria smiled, remembering the last time Victoria Sterling had been very interested in meeting her personally. Of course, Maria said, I'll be there Thursday at 2 p.m. As she hung up the phone, Maria realized that after 10 years of building her business and proving herself, she was finally going to get something she had never dared to hope for, the chance to look Victoria Sterling in the eye as an equal. Actually, if the rumors about Sterling Media Group's financial troubles were true, she might be looking at Victoria as something even better than an equal. She might be looking at her as her future employee. Thursday arrived gray and drizzly, matching Maria's complex emotions as she pulled into the parking garage of the Sterling Media Group building. The gleaming downtown high-rise was everything her modest office wasn't. Marble lobbies, original artwork, the kind of casual luxury that spoke of money so old and established it didn't need to announce itself. Maria checked her reflection in the elevator mirror as she rode up to the 32nd floor. She wore her best business suit, a charcoal gray ensemble she had bought to celebrate her first $1 million contract. Her hair was styled professionally, her makeup understated but polished. She looked like exactly what she had become, a successful businesswoman who belonged in boardrooms like the one she was about to enter. But as the elevator climbed higher, Maria's mind drifted back to that night 10 years ago when she had sat in the back of a school conference room, wearing her only decent blouse, feeling the weight of every dismissive glance and condescending word. The elevator doors opened onto an impressive reception area where a young woman in designer clothes greeted her with practiced politeness. "Ms. Gonzalez, Mrs. Sterling is waiting for you in the conference room." Maria followed her down a hallway lined with awards and photos of Victoria posing with Chicago's political and business elite. Each image was a testament to the world Victoria had been born into. The connections, the access, the assumption that she belonged at every important table in the city. The conference room doors opened, and there she was. Victoria Sterling looked exactly as Maria remembered, perhaps a few more fine lines around her eyes, but still carrying herself with the same casual arrogance that had defined her a decade ago. She wore a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than Maria had earned in her first month as a freelancer, and her smile had the same sharp edge it had carried that night at prestigious academy. "Maria Gonzalez," Victoria said, rising from her seat at the head of a polished mahogany table. "Thank you so much for coming. Please, have a seat." Maria sat across from Victoria, noting the carefully arranged documents on the table, the fresh flowers, the expensive bottled water, all the trappings designed to impress and intimidate. 10 years ago it might have worked. "I have to say," Victoria continued, settling back into her chair, "I've been hearing quite a lot about your little company lately. Very impressive growth for such a modest operation." The condescension was subtle, but unmistakable. Even now, even when Victoria needed something from her, she couldn't resist the dig. Maria felt a familiar tightness in her chest. But this time, it wasn't humiliation. It was anticipation. "Thank you," Maria replied calmly. "We've been fortunate to work with some wonderful clients." "Yes, I've noticed," Victoria said, and for the first time there was an edge to her voice. "Several of whom used to work with us." Maria raised an eyebrow. "Business is competitive. I'm sure you understand." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, competition is healthy. But I thought perhaps we might discuss ways to collaborate rather than compete. After all, there's plenty of business to go around." "What did you have in mind?" Victoria leaned forward, switching to what Maria recognized as her sales mode. "Well, Sterling Media Group has something that smaller firms like yours often struggle with: infrastructure, established relationships, credibility with major corporations. And you have something we could use: a fresh perspective, enthusiasm, that entrepreneurial energy." Maria listened politely, but her mind was racing. Victoria still didn't recognize her. After delivering one of the most humiliating moments of Maria's life, after casually dismissing her as someone who should understand her limitations, Victoria Sterling had no memory of the woman she had crushed. "What exactly are you proposing?" Maria asked. "A partnership," Victoria said confidently. "We could acquire your client list, bring you in as a senior consultant, give you access to the kind of resources that could really take your career to the next level. Of course, you'd be working under Sterling Media's brand and leadership, but think of the opportunities." Maria sat back in her chair studying Victoria's face. "And what would happen to my employees?" Victoria waved dismissively. We'd evaluate each position individually. I'm sure we could find places for the most valuable team members. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. Victoria was proposing to dismantle everything Maria had built, absorb the profitable pieces, and discard the rest, including the people who had helped make Gonzalez Marketing Solutions successful. That's a generous offer, Maria said carefully. But I'm curious about something. Do we know each other, Ms. Sterling? Victoria looked puzzled. I don't think so. Should we? Maria felt something crystallize inside her chest, a moment of perfect clarity about who these two women were and what this conversation really meant. We've met once before, Maria said quietly. About 10 years ago. Really? Victoria frowned, clearly searching her memory. I meet so many people. Was it at a conference, a networking event? Prestigious academy, Maria said. A PTA meeting. You were discussing the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C.? Maria watched as understanding slowly dawned on Victoria's face. The color drained from her cheeks as the memory came flooding back. The school conference room, the scholarship mother in the back corner, the public humiliation delivered with surgical precision. Oh, Victoria said faintly. Oh, my God. You told me that some people are meant to clean offices and others are meant to own them, Maria continued, her voice steady but carrying the weight of 10 years of accumulated pain and determination. You said that hard work without results is just sad. You suggested that my daughter and I should understand our limitations. Victoria's mouth opened and closed without sound. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she was completely speechless. You told a room full of parents that scholarship students didn't deserve the same opportunities as their wealthy classmates, Maria went on. You said that dreams are lovely, but reality is what puts food on the table. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of recognition and reckoning. Maria, Victoria said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, That was what? Maria asked. A mistake? A misunderstanding? Just business? Victoria's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. I never meant. You never meant for the cleaning lady to be sitting across from you 10 years later in a position to decline your generous offer to absorb my company. Maria's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You never meant for the scholarship mother to become successful enough to take your clients? I was different then, Victoria said desperately. I said things I shouldn't have. It was a different time. Maria leaned forward. It was 10 years ago, not 50. And you haven't changed, Victoria. 30 minutes ago, you called my company a modest operation and referred to my team members as potentially valuable resources to be evaluated. You offered me a job working under your brand and leadership, as if the idea that I might be your equal was inconceivable. Victoria's face crumpled. What do you want from me? I want you to understand, Maria said simply. That night at prestigious academy, you didn't just insult me. You looked at my 13-year-old daughter, who had earned her place at that school through pure merit, and declared her unworthy. You tried to teach her that her mother's poverty made her a second-class citizen. I'm sorry, Victoria whispered. I'm so sorry. Sophia graduated as valedictorian, Maria continued. Full scholarship to Northwestern. She's finishing her MBA at Harvard now. She's everything I knew she could be, despite what you tried to tell her about her limitations. Victoria was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. And me? Maria stood up, gathering her purse. I built my company from nothing. I earned every client, every success, every dollar, not through connections or inherited wealth, but through the kind of hard work you dismissed as sad and meaningless. She paused at the conference room door, looking back at Victoria, who sat slumped in her chair, finally understanding the magnitude of what she had done 10 years ago. You were right about one thing, though, Maria said. Some people are meant to clean offices, and others are meant to own them. You just got confused about which one of us was which. As Maria walked back toward the elevator, she could hear Victoria sobbing behind the closed conference room door. But Maria felt no satisfaction in the other woman's tears. This hadn't been about revenge. It had been about truth, about making sure that Victoria Sterling finally understood the real cost of her casual cruelty. The elevator doors closed, and Maria descended toward the parking garage, leaving Victoria alone with the wreckage of her assumptions about power, worth, and who deserves to succeed in this world. The story of Maria Gonzalez's meeting with Victoria Sterling spread through Chicago's business community like wildfire. In a city where networking was currency and reputation was everything, word traveled fast when someone as established as Victoria Sterling was brought low by someone she had once dismissed. Within a week, 3 more of Sterling Media Group's clients had quietly reached out to Gonzalez Marketing Solutions. Within a month, Victoria's company had lost 7 major accounts. The exodus wasn't due to any campaign by Maria. It was simply the natural consequence of businesses recognizing that Sterling Media Group was no longer the safe, established choice it had once appeared to be. Victoria spent the days following her confrontation with Maria in a fog of humiliation and self-reflection that was entirely foreign to her. For 42 years, she had moved through the world secure in her position, never questioning her right to judge others or her assumptions about who deserved success. Now, forced to confront the reality of her situation, Victoria began to see her life and career with devastating clarity. Sterling Media Group was in trouble, had been in trouble for years. Their success had been built on reputation and connections rather than actual performance, and in an increasingly competitive market, that was no longer enough. More importantly, Victoria began to understand that her treatment of Maria hadn't been an isolated incident. She started remembering other moments over the years when she had casually dismissed people she considered beneath her notice. The server she had berated for being too slow, the contractor she had humiliated in front of other clients, the countless small cruelties she had inflicted simply because she could. Each memory was like a weight added to her chest, making it harder to breathe, harder to maintain the pretense that she was a good person who had simply made a few mistakes. 3 weeks after the meeting, Victoria's business partner James Morrison called an emergency meeting. "We need to talk," he said grimly, spreading financial reports across Victoria's desk. "We're losing clients faster than we can replace them. Our revenue is down 30% from last year, and it's accelerating." Victoria stared at the numbers, but all she could see was Maria's calm, steady gaze as she had explained exactly how Victoria's words had impacted her family. "It's not just about the Gonzalez situation," Morrison continued, "though that certainly didn't help. The truth is, we've been coasting for too long, our work has gotten stale, our prices are too high, and we're not delivering results that justify what we charge." Victoria nodded numbly. She knew he was right. Sterling Media Group had been successful for so long that they had stopped trying to be excellent. They had assumed their position was secure, that their clients would stay loyal, regardless of performance. "What are you saying?" Victoria asked, though she suspected she already knew. Morrison sighed heavily. "I'm saying we need to make some serious changes, cut overhead, reduce staff, probably close the downtown office, and move to something smaller. And, Victoria, we need to consider bringing in outside leadership, someone who can turn this around." The implication was clear. Victoria's leadership had led them to this point, and Victoria's leadership wasn't going to get them out of it. That evening, Victoria sat in her empty office. Most of the staff had been let go over the past 2 weeks, and tried to figure out how her life had come to this point. She had always thought of herself as successful, as someone who had earned her position through talent and hard work. But sitting alone, surrounded by the awards and photos that had once represented her achievements, Victoria began to understand that she had confused privilege with merit, connections with competence, and cruelty with strength. Her phone rang, interrupting her dark thoughts. "Ms. Sterling?" The voice was unfamiliar. "This is Rebecca Martinez from Gonzalez Marketing Solutions. Ms. Gonzalez asked me to call you." Victoria's heart began to race. What does she want? "She'd like to schedule another meeting with you. She says she has a proposition that might be of mutual interest." Victoria almost laughed. After everything that had happened, Maria wanted to meet again. Either she was calling to twist the knife deeper, or Victoria couldn't imagine what the alternative might be. "When?" Victoria asked. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. if you're available." She suggested meeting at Prestigious Academy. The location hit Victoria like a slap. The scene of the original crime, the place where she had planted the seeds of her own destruction. "I'll be there," Victoria said quietly. As she hung up the phone, Victoria realized that for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than despair. She felt curious. After everything Victoria had done to her, after all the pain and humiliation she had caused, what could Maria Gonzalez possibly want to say to her now? The answer, Victoria suspected, would determine not just her immediate future, but whether she had any chance of rebuilding her life into something she could be proud of. Victoria arrived at Prestigious Academy 15 minutes early, sitting in her car in the parking lot where she had once felt so confidently superior. The school looked exactly the same. Imposing brick facade, manicured grounds, the kind of institutional elegance that spoke of tradition and excellence. But Victoria felt like a completely different person from the woman who had walked through these halls a decade ago. At exactly 2 p.m., she made her way to the same conference room where the original PTA meeting had taken place. Maria was already there, sitting in what had once been Victoria's seat at the head of the table. She wore a navy blue business suit and an expression that was unreadable. "Thank you for coming," Maria said as Victoria took a seat, notably in the same back corner where Maria had sat 10 years ago. "I have to admit, I'm curious," Victoria said. "After our last conversation, I didn't expect to hear from you again." Maria smiled. "But it wasn't unkind. I've been thinking about that conversation, about you, about me, about what happened here 10 years ago." Victoria waited, uncertain where this was leading. "I realized that I never told you what happened to Sophia after that PTA meeting," Maria continued. "She came home that night and asked me about the Washington trip. When I told her we couldn't afford it, do you know what she said?" Victoria shook her head. "She said, 'That's okay, Mom. Someday when I'm successful, I'll take you to Washington. We'll see everything together.'" Maria's voice softened. She was 13 years old, and instead of being disappointed, she was making plans to take care of me. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She remembered her own daughter at 13, entitled, demanding, taking every privilege for granted. "Sophia graduated from Harvard last month," Maria continued. "She's accepted a position at Goldman Sachs. Her starting salary is more than what I made in my first 5 years of business combined." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "That's wonderful. She sounds like an amazing young woman." "She is. And she became that way not despite what happened here, but because of it. Your words that night taught her something valuable about the world, that some people will try to limit her, based on circumstances beyond her control, and that the only answer to that kind of prejudice is excellence." Victoria studied Maria's face, trying to understand where this conversation was leading. "But I've been thinking about you too, Victoria," Maria said, "about what kind of person delivers that kind of cruelty to a child, about what has to be broken inside someone to make them think that's acceptable." "I don't have an excuse," Victoria said quietly. "I was horrible to you and Sophia. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." "I believe you are sorry," Maria replied. "But sorry doesn't undo damage. Sorry doesn't change the fact that you built a career and a life on the assumption that your privilege made you superior to people like me." Victoria nodded, unable to argue with the assessment. "So here's what I've decided," Maria said, leaning forward. "I'm going to offer you a job." Victoria blinked, certain she had misheard. What? Gonzalez Marketing Solutions is expanding. We need someone with experience managing large corporate accounts, someone who understands how to navigate Chicago's business community. Your company may be failing, but you do have skills and connections that could be valuable. Victoria stared at her in shock. You want to hire me? I want to give you a chance to rebuild your life properly this time, Maria corrected. But it won't be easy, and it won't be comfortable. You'd be starting over. Victoria. Entry-level position, modest salary, no special treatment because of who you used to be. The offer was stunning in its generosity and its justice. You'd report to me, Maria continued. You'd work alongside people who started with nothing and earned everything they have. You'd learn what it actually means to serve clients instead of just collecting their money. Victoria felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Maria was offering and what she was asking. Why? Victoria asked. After everything I did to you, why would you help me? Maria was quiet for a long moment. Because 10 years ago, you taught my daughter that some people in this world will try to crush her dreams simply because they can. But I want to teach her something different. I want to show her that when you have power, you can choose to lift people up instead of tear them down. Victoria began to cry, not the desperate tears of self-pity she had shed in recent weeks, but something deeper and more honest. I don't deserve this, she whispered. No, you don't, Maria agreed. But Sophia deserves to see that the world can be better than what you showed her that night. And maybe you deserve a chance to become the person you should have been all along. Victoria looked around the conference room where her worst instincts had once held court, where her casual cruelty had set in motion the events that led to this moment. What would I be doing? She asked. Learning, Maria said simply. Learning how to serve instead of being served. Learning how to earn respect instead of demanding it. Learning what it means to work for something instead of inheriting it. Victoria took a shaky breath. The prospect was terrifying. Giving up the last remnants of her old identity, starting over at 42, under the supervision of a woman she had once dismissed as worthless. But it was also the first offer of genuine hope she had received in months. When would I start? Victoria asked. Maria smiled, the first truly warm expression Victoria had seen from her. Monday morning. 9 a.m. sharp. And Victoria? Don't be late. In my company, everyone earns their place every single day. As they stood to leave, Victoria found herself in the strange position of feeling grateful to someone she had once considered beneath her notice. Maria, she said as they reached the parking lot. Thank you for the opportunity, for the chance to try to be better. Maria nodded. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in a year if you're still there and you've actually learned something. As Victoria drove home, she realized that for the first time in her adult life, she was excited about going to work on Monday morning. Not because of the salary or the prestige or the power, but because she was finally going to have the chance to discover what she was actually capable of when she couldn't coast on privilege and connections. The woman who had once declared that some people were meant to clean offices while others were meant to own them was about to learn that the most important thing wasn't which side of that divide you started on. It was what you did with the opportunities you were given to become something better. 2 years later, Victoria Sterling stood in the lobby of the new Gonzalez Marketing Solutions headquarters, watching Maria address the company's annual meeting. The business had grown from 15 employees to over 60, with offices in Chicago, Milwaukee, and Indianapolis. Victoria's own transformation had been equally dramatic. She now served as Director of Corporate Relations, a position she had earned through 2 years of 12-hour days, weekend work, and the kind of hands-on learning she had never experienced in her privileged rise to her former success. She had started by making coffee and organizing files, gradually working her way up as she proved she could be trusted with larger responsibilities. The work had been humbling in ways Victoria hadn't expected. She had learned to listen to clients instead of talking at them, to solve problems instead of passing them off to subordinates, to measure success by results rather than billable hours. More importantly, she had learned to work alongside people she once would have dismissed. Immigrants building their own American dreams, single mothers juggling careers and families, young people who saw opportunity where Victoria had once seen only obstacles. Our success this year, Maria was saying from the podium, belongs to every person in this room who chose excellence over excuses, who chose service over self-interest, who chose to build something meaningful instead of just profitable. Victoria found herself nodding along with Maria's words, understanding them in a way she never could have 2 years ago. After the meeting, Maria approached Victoria in the hallway. "How are you feeling about the Peterson account?" Maria asked, referring to a major client Victoria had been managing for the past 6 months. "Nervous," Victoria admitted honestly. "It's our biggest contract, and I want to make sure we exceed their expectations." Maria smiled. 2 years ago, you would have told me you had everything under control, even if you didn't. The fact that you're nervous tells me you understand what's at stake." Victoria had learned that Maria valued honest assessment over confident bluster, results over promises, collaboration over competition. "I've been thinking about something," Victoria said, "about expanding our mentorship program." One of Victoria's responsibilities was overseeing the company's program for helping other small business owners develop their marketing strategies. It was work that had given her more satisfaction than any contract she had landed in her previous career. "What did you have in mind?" Maria asked. "I want to partner with some of the local schools, help high school students from lower-income families learn about business and marketing, maybe offer internships, scholarships, real pathways to careers they might not know are possible." Maria studied Victoria's face. "That's a significant commitment. Are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility?" Victoria nodded. "I want to do for other kids what you did for me. Show them that their circumstances don't define their potential." "What I did for you?" "You gave me a chance to prove I could be better than my worst moment," Victoria said. "You showed me that leadership isn't about having power over people. It's about using whatever power you have to lift them up." Maria's expression softened. "You've learned a lot in 2 years." "I had a good teacher." As they walked back toward their offices, Victoria reflected on how completely her understanding of success had changed. She made less money than she had at Sterling Media Group, worked longer hours, and had far less autonomy. But she went home every evening with a sense of accomplishment she had never felt during her years of inherited privilege. 6 months later, Victoria found herself back at prestigious academy, not for a PTA meeting this time, but to speak to a group of students about career opportunities in marketing and business. In the audience, she saw faces that reminded her of Sophia at 13, bright, eager, some clearly from wealthy families, others obviously there on scholarships or struggling to afford even the basic school supplies. "Success," Victoria told them, "isn't about starting with advantages. It's about what you do with whatever opportunities come your way. Some of you will have more resources to begin with than others. What matters is whether you use those resources to build something meaningful or just to maintain your position." After her presentation, a young Latina girl approached her, clearly one of the scholarship students based on her carefully maintained but inexpensive clothes. "Ms. Sterling," the girl said shyly, "I want to start my own business someday, but I don't know if someone like me could really make it." Victoria knelt down to the girl's level, looking her directly in the eyes. "Someone like you is exactly who should make it," she said firmly. "You'll work harder because you have to. You'll be more creative because you'll have fewer resources to waste. You'll care more because success won't be handed to you. You'll have to earn it." The girl's face lit up with possibility. "What's your name?" Victoria asked. "Isabella Martinez." "Well, Isabella Martinez, let me give you my card. When you're ready for high school internships or college recommendations, you call me. I want to help you build whatever dreams you're brave enough to chase." as Victoria watched Isabella walk away. Clutching the business card like a treasure, she thought about Sofia Gonzalez, now a successful investment banker in New York, and about her own daughter, who had grown up taking every advantage for granted. She thought about Maria, who had transformed a moment of humiliation into a decade of determination, and about her own journey from privileged cruelty to earned redemption. Most of all, she thought about the choice every person with power faces every day, whether to use that power to maintain artificial barriers or to help others break them down. Victoria had spent the first 40 years of her life making the wrong choice. She intended to spend however many years she had left making the right one. The conference room where she had once delivered her casual cruelty was now filled with the voices of young people planning their futures, regardless of the circumstances of their birth. And Victoria Sterling, former wielder of inherited privilege, current believer in earned opportunity, was finally, truly successful. What do you think of Victoria and Maria's journey? Did Maria make the right choice in offering Victoria a second chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end.